Hi all and welcome to the second part of the strings chapter, which is part of our algorithms and data structures course. In this video, we will go over an algorithms problem which will introduce us on how to work with strings, add binary. For strings, there are actually two most important types of problems. Today, we will start with just learning how to iterate through a string, and in the next video, we will learn a very popular problem type that is often encountered in interviews. I will add a GitHub URL where I post all the problems I'm working on and document every data structure and algorithm as well, so you can follow along my progress. Before we continue, please take just a second to like the video, as it helps with the YouTube algorithm so that more people can benefit from this course. Also, please subscribe so that you will receive notifications when a new section of our course will be released. Now let's read the text of the problem and understand our requirements. Given two binary strings A and B, return their sum as a binary string. As we see in the example 1, the inputs are 1, 1 and 1, and when we add them we have 1, 0, 0. Why? Because this is actually binary addition, and in binary addition we can only have two digits, 0 and 1. We will go into more detail on how to add two binary numbers and how to achieve that with strings in the drawing section of this video. Welcome to the conceptual overview of learning how to solve the add binary using two strings. First thing that we need to remember is that when we add two numbers, we always start at the end, and it has to continue for the length of the longest number. In our first case here, as you can see, our two numbers are equal in length, but for the second case, our two numbers have different length. Another thing to remember is to keep a carry for when the sum of two digits is higher than 1. Since we add binary numbers, we can only have 0 and 1. To manipulate and add 1 or 0, depending on the value of the sum, we append sum modulo 2, and you will see how that looks in our code. We update the carry to the sum divided by 2. Once again, this is of course for the coding portion of the video. And at the end, if the carry is 1, then it needs to be appended to the final result. In order to understand our algorithm, let's perform two additions and see step by step how it goes. So basically, if we think in terms of variables, we have the two strings, string A and string B, same for the second case. We need to initialize the carry, which of course starts at 0, and we need to know the length of the two strings, especially for the case when the two lengths differ, in order to be able to go as long as the longest string lasts. Let's start with performing the first addition. So if we check here, 0 plus 1 is 1, so we add 1 to our result string and carry remains 0. Then we add 1 plus 1. This normally would be 2, but we cannot have 2 in binary. Thus, we put a 0 here and we update the carry to 1. So one thing to remember now, when the addition is higher than 1, then we have to add 0 and update the carry to 1. That's why, as I said, we append the sum modulo 2 to the string, because in this case modulo 2 returns 0 because there is nothing left when we divide, and we update the carry to sum divided by 2, which in this case is 1. Pretty straightforward. We move to the third step. We have 0 plus 0 equals 0, and we also have to add the carry, because in this case carry is more than 0, so we add 1 and carry has to be updated to 0. And for the final step, we have 1 plus 1 once again equals 2, so just like before, we put 0 and we update the carry to 1. And now for the final step of our addition, we check if our carry is higher than 0. In this case it is, it's 1, and we add the carry to the end of the result. So now our result is 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. Let's check also the second example, because now we went through each step, so it's more clear now how this addition works, and see how we can apply what we learned in the first example to the second example. 1 plus 1 equals 2. So in this case, I'm gonna put 0 here, and I'm gonna update the carry to 1. 1 plus nothing equals 1, but we also have to keep in mind that we have a carry. We add the carry, 1 plus 1 equals 2. So we will add 0, and the carry remains 1. Now, we are at the end of the longest string, so we check if the carry is higher than 0, it is 1, so we add the carry. The algorithm is pretty straightforward, but let's write down the steps so that we can visualize them better. So we have step 1, which is loop through the strings. This is the first thing we need to do, right? We loop until we finished the longest string. This is a very easy step. The second step, add each digit. The third step is if the sum is greater than 1, then append 0 and we update carry to 1. Else append sum and we don't do anything with the carry. How we achieve that? Well, in our result, let's have a conceptual result here, will be equal with the value of the sum modulo 2. So in this case, if sum is 2, we would have 2 modulo 2 equals 0. In case sum is 0 or 1, this modulo 2 equals 0 or 1. So it's pretty easy. And in the carry, we will add sum divided by 2. And once again, if the sum is 2 divided by 2, carry will become 1. If sum is 0 or 1 divided by 2, it will be 0. Pretty easy trick to treat the case where the sum is greater than 1. We will see this also in the coding portion of our video. And we have the fourth step. If the carry is 1, then append carry. And this is the whole algorithm in 4 steps. Now let's move on to the coding part of the video and see how we will code what we just learned here. Let's start with the Python implementation of our algorithm, and for this I'm gonna define a result as an array, and as we saw in the drawing, I have to define a carry, which I will initialize to 0. I also want to initialize 2 other variables. One will be the end position of the first string, so this means length of a -1, and the second one will be the end position of the second string, so length of b -1. Now I will define a loop, and I'm gonna say while I is greater or equal than 0 or j is greater or equal than 0. And this is because I don't know which one of the 2 strings has a larger length, and I need to traverse until the end of the larger string, as we saw in the drawing. I'm gonna initialize the sum to the carry, and now I'm gonna say if I is greater or equal than 0, then I'm gonna add to the sum the value of the character at position I. Let's do the same for j. Now I'm gonna append to the result the string value of the sum modulo 2, because as we said, in binary we can only have 0 or 1. And I'm also gonna initialize the carry to the sum divided by 2, which also in this case can only be 0 or 1. Now I'm gonna decrement I, and I'm gonna decrement j. And let's not forget that once I have my result, we also have to add the carry. So I'm gonna say if carry is 1, of course this only happens if carry is 1, result dot append string value of the carry. Now I'm gonna reverse the result, and I'm gonna return the string value of the result. Let's see how the code runs. We see it works. Let's also submit it, and we see we have a pretty good solution that is accepted. Now let's continue with the Java implementation of our algorithm, and for this I'm gonna start with initializing a string builder result, which will be a new string builder. If you remember, we spoke in the first chapter of our strings course about how strings are immutable in Java. We can either convert them to an array of characters, or we can use additional data structures. And for Java we have the string builder or the string buffer. For this video we chose to use the string builder. And just as a side note, the difference between string builder and string buffer is that string buffer is actually synchronized. It's more thread safe, but in this case we're not dealing with threads, so we choose the faster solution, which is string builder. I'm gonna initialize a carry as well, which will be 0, an I variable, which will be the end position of the first string, and the J, which will be the last position of the string B. I'm gonna create a while loop while I is greater or equal than 0, or J is greater or equal than 0, and this is because I don't know which string is longer, A or B, so I need to traverse until the end of the longer string. I'm gonna initialize my sum to the carry, and I'm gonna create an if condition where I'm gonna say if I greater or equal than 0, then I'm gonna add the character at position I to the sum, and I'm gonna subtract the character 0, and what this does is transforms a character into a number. Let's do the exact same for the second string. I'm gonna say if J is greater or equal than 0, then add the sum B character at J. Now I'm gonna append to my result sum modulo 2, because as we see we are doing our addition in binary, so you can only have 1 or 0, and by doing this operation we will append to our result 1 or 0. And I also want to update my carry to sum divided by 2, which will also be 1 or 0. Now I'm gonna decrement I and J, and as we saw in the drawing, if the carry is equal to 1, then I need to also add the carry to my result. And now I'm gonna return my result reverse, because addition always starts from the end, and convert it to string. Let's test our solution. It works, let's submit it. And as we see, we have a really good solution. It's faster than 100% of other solutions. And it's also very memory efficient. I really hope that you enjoyed this segment of our algorithms and data structure course. If you did, or if you have any suggestions, please take a moment to leave a comment below. Try to solve more on LeetCode until you feel comfortable with strings. Don't forget to like the video, as it helps with the YouTube algorithm so that more people can benefit from this course. Also, please don't forget to subscribe and press the bell button to receive notifications when the next chapter of the course will be released. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.